But the challenges of converting buildings like this go beyond aesthetics, says Nathan Vitasek with engineering firm Simpson, Gumpertz and Hager.
You end up spending lots and lots of effort trying to make it retroactively meet contemporary requirements.
Things like fire and earthquake safety standards, accessibility, and the added plumbing and ventilation needed for all those additional bathrooms and kitchens. And that's if the city will allow it in the first place.
The existing zoning codes in the city made it very difficult.
Ken Bernstein is a city planner in Los Angeles where developers ran into a problem converting the crumbling stock of early 20th century office buildings.
Any residential building had to have at least 2 parking spaces per unit.
Old office buildings don't have that. So in 1999, the city passed an ordinance that made exceptions for these projects, helping to transform downtown into a vibrant residential neighborhood. Today, the city has plans for another 4,000 apartment conversions. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino for Marketplace.
From a remarkably empty office building in Washington, D.C., I'm David Brancaccio, Marketplace Morning Report from APM, American Public Media.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. The Move Over Law protects police, fire, EMS, utility, and sanitation personnel by requiring drivers to move over and slow down for their vehicles.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health is a proud sponsor of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Ahead in the next 5 minutes, live local news for the First Coast from the WJCT News team.
It's What's Happening. Hi, I'm Melissa Ross. And just ahead, hear from some of the biggest newsmakers in the community on First Coast Connect, where we discuss the issues and stories that affect your life all across the First Coast. We also ask for your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Engagement is what drives this show, so engage with us right now as we get started here in just a few minutes on First Coast Connect. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Today marks the first deadline for 4 former Trump administration officials to appear before a House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. NPR's Claudia Grisales reports it's not clear if any will show up.
The Select House Committee investigating the deadly attack set a deadline today for former strategist Steve Bannon and an ex-Defense Department official, Kash Patel, to testify. They were to be followed tomorrow with depositions from ex-White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and former White House aide Dan Scavino. But all 4 witnesses appear to be in a holding pattern as the panel sorts through arguments that executive privilege shields them from cooperating. Former President Trump claims certain conversations are protected by the executive privilege. The committee has said that may not be the case and is threatening criminal referrals if the witnesses do not ultimately cooperate. Claudia Grisales, NPR News, Washington.
Advisors to the Food and Drug Administration are considering whether the agency should authorize boosters of the COVID-19 vaccines by Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. Authorization has already been given to Pfizer's vaccine. Moderna is asking for authorization for the same groups of people eligible for the Pfizer boosters. Unionized nurses and other health care workers in California and Oregon have voted to authorize a strike. They're negotiating a contract with Kaiser Permanente, which runs hospitals and clinics. There is no strike yet. Economist Jane Carter is negotiating part of the alliance of healthcare unions. She says Kaiser is seeking a low pay increase and a significant concession.
The detrimental aspect of Kaiser's proposal is starting in 2023, so not too far around the corner. New hires will start out at rates between 26 to 39% less than current employees.
She spoke to NPR's Morning Edition. Kaiser Permanente is asking unionized workers to reject a strike and to stay with patients in the midst of the pandemic. A new study says the pandemic has worsened risk factors for childhood obesity, especially for children from low-income families. The study is by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. NPR's Maria Godoy has more.
The report found that nationwide, 1 in 6 children between the ages of 10 and 17 have obesity. Differences were stark based on household income, with obesity rates nearly 3 times higher among the lowest income families as those with the highest income. Rates were also significantly higher for Hispanic, Black, and American Indian children compared to white children. The report concludes the findings should be a call to action to lawmakers to strengthen the social safety net and expand access to federal nutrition programs, such as free school meals. Maria Godoy, NPR News.
The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is an NPR financial supporter. This is NPR News.
It's 9:04. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Jacksonville's recycling pickup could be suspended for 6 months or longer, according to city officials. As WJCT News' Claire Heddles reports, the city's new recycling drop-off sites are taking more manpower than expected.
It could be next spring before you get your recycling picked up at home again. Jacksonville Chief Administrative Officer Brian Hughes told City Council this week.
When we contemplated the policy with the mayor, he expressed his deep desire for the outlier to be 6 months, but I hesitate to guarantee because the number of variables, as you see, that occur every day.
Meanwhile, the city is doubling the frequency that its 15 new recycling drop-off locations get cleared out to twice a day. Haulers are following behind the recyclers to take any trash left on the ground. And a plan to rezone land on the south side for a waste transfer site was scrapped this week amid pushback from the surrounding community. The proposal would have shortened trash collectors' routes. Claire Heddles, WJCT News, 89.9.
The state fire marshal is investigating what caused a mobile home fire in Doctors Inlet where 2 people were found dead. It happened on Christie Court near Bosco Boulevard, according to a report from our partner News4Jax. Clay County Fire Rescue arrived about 10 last night. Firefighters were also dealing with a downed live power line. After about 25 minutes, they got inside and found 2 people dead. 70 degrees now in Jacksonville, warming to the mid-80s this afternoon.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Appian. Appian offers low-code technology to help businesses keep up with change. More information is available at appian.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
It's being called a cancer screening crisis. This is First Coast Connect. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlene Shirk, sitting in for Melissa Ross. Thanks so much for listening this morning. So just ahead this hour, October is Breast Cancer Month, but we are going to talk about the fact that we are in the midst of a cancer screening crisis. Guess what? Stemming from the pandemic. We're going to take a look at how we got here and what's being done to encourage people to get screened. So if you'd like to join the conversation, just give us a call at 549-2937. Then later, we'll preview a Hispanic Heritage Month festival taking place downtown this weekend. But first this hour, earlier this month, Governor DeSantis announced that his 41-year-old wife and mother of 3, Casey DeSantis, is facing a diagnosis of breast cancer. And this week, he shared that Casey said she just had a feeling. She just knew she needed to get in for a mammogram. Well, with October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month and with the disease now hitting home, the governor is urging Floridians to follow up on their doctor's recommendations aimed at detecting or battling the disease.
I do think that the lesson is it wasn't like she was in a lot of pain. I mean, these screenings and the things that you go can really, really be life-saving.
Well, here's how we got here, folks. During COVID-19's peak last year, the National Cancer Institute reported up to a 90% decline in screening-related procedures. So many people have missed their screening, it's now being called a cancer screening crisis. Then, the following months after the peak of the virus, screenings resumed, but they were limited, which resulted in nearly 80,000 potential missed or delayed diagnoses. Can you believe that? And currently, breast cancer screenings are down 87% and 90% for colon cancer. As a result, an estimated 10,000 more deaths are projected from breast and colorectal cancer alone. So in response, the American Cancer Society has launched a return to screening initiative to increase screening rates with a renewed urgency. So here's the number to call if you'd like to join the conversation, 549-2937. Have you put your screening off? Have you rescheduled it? Again, the number is 549-2937. You can also email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, comment on our Facebook page, or tweet us at wjct.org. So joining us to talk more about this screening crisis and the Return to Screening initiative are Dr. Galen Scuderi of the Ackerman Cancer Center and Cynthia Farah, breast cancer survivor and National American Cancer Society volunteer for Making Strides. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies.
Good morning. Thank
Glad
you.
to be here.
So, Dr. Scuderi, you are on the front line of having to have postponed screenings during COVID, and now you're urging your patients to get those screenings rescheduled. What are you seeing? Are you seeing people just taking their time to get back in?
Sure. Well, I'm so glad that you're bringing this issue up and highlighting it. It's just so important right now, and in particular in light of all of the changes that our whole world has seen related to COVID. Certainly the area that I think has been in my world has been most impacted is the fact that we do see women who have delayed getting their mammogram or delayed their cancer screening test. And it is certainly starting to, we're not going to fully see the effects of that for a while, but I am starting to perceive that there are women who potentially could have been evaluated earlier, should have been evaluated earlier, and are therefore presenting with a delayed diagnosis, larger tumors that require more surgery, more chemotherapy, more intervention, just things that could have been prevented. So I think it's so important what the American Cancer Society is doing right now, placing an emphasis on getting back out there, getting back focused on your health and preventative health in particular, and getting those screenings done beginning at age 40 for most women.
And Cynthia, you're a breast cancer survivor. You caught your cancer early. Tell us how you did that, and then we want to talk about, obviously, you are really doing your best as an ambassador for the American Cancer Society to get people to get their screenings.
Yes. Thank you again for having me, Charlene. So I worked in a breast center and in cancer care for many years. So a big part of my job was to educate women and to make sure they knew when to get their annual cancer screenings, whether it was breast cancer, colon cancer, lung cancer, whatever that may be. So when I was telling my patients that they had to have this every year, of course, I was obligated to do the same. And so it was just during one of my annual screenings, and I was in the breast center that I managed with the doctors that I worked with every single day. And my screening looked a little abnormal, wasn't crazy bad, but the doctor said, we can do a biopsy if you want. And I said, no, let's wait 6 months, see if it changes. We waited 6 months, and walking into that biopsy room, I had this feeling. I just, like so many women say they had a feeling, and like Governor DeSantis says his wife Casey had a feeling before her screening. Women know their body. If you do the right things, women know their body. And I knew going into that biopsy that it was going to be cancer. Now, I was very fortunate that mine was a very, very early stage cancer. So I did not have to go through chemotherapy and radiation. I was able to get my cancer taken care of with mastectomy. So in some ways, I was very, very fortunate in the way that I was able to handle my cancer care. It still made a difference, but I'm still here today. I'm living life. I'm happy, and I'm able to still share the message that you need to know your body, get your screenings, don't be afraid, because it's a lot more scary when you have to go through cancer treatment compared to an annual screening.
And Cynthia, you had shared with me that your cancer was stage 0. I didn't even know there was a stage 0. So that truly underscores the value of getting those screenings often and early. And Dr. Scuderi, can you kind of just remind everybody, what are the current recommendations when women need to start receiving screenings, and how long through your life should you get them?
So this is a great question because there's been a lot of controversy over the last, I would say, decade about who should get screening, how often, and for how long. And the current guidelines from the Society of Breast Imaging and the American College of Radiology really emphasize that screening needs to be done in the context of risk, of personal risk. It's really important that women have a risk assessment by their physician to determine whether or not they are at average risk or whether or not they might be at higher than average risk, because the screening recommendations differ a little bit depending on what the woman's personal risk is. So for women who are at average risk, they should definitely start performing or seeking out screening mammography beginning at age 40 and do it on an annual basis. The Society of Breast Imaging and American College of Radiology, they do recommend, and these are recommendations that have actually been fairly recently updated within the last couple of months. They recommend that screening really should continue past the age of 74 unless there is a severe presence of comorbidity. In other words, that unless the woman has a lot of other medical problems going on that are limiting life expectancy. But if a woman is healthy and living a productive and happy life and has no foreseeable threat to their life, they should continue screening mammography well past 75. In our practice at Ackerman Cancer Center, we have 2 offices, one of which is up in the Amelia Island area, and we see a very robust population of women who are retired or above the age of 80 and have settled here. And I'll tell you, they're still out there getting at it every single day and living a great life. And certainly they are still coming for their screening mammograms. I think it's still important.
And Dr. Scuderi, let's not forget men, too, because our own David Luckin here at WJCT, who brings us all this fabulous music, he was recently diagnosed with breast cancer as well. And he also said he felt something, he had a feeling, he went into his doctor, and sure enough, they caught it early. He had chemo, and then it was done, and he's doing great now.
Yes, no, breast cancer in men does occur, and it is something that there needs to be awareness for. It certainly is less common than breast cancer in women, but it doesn't. It can also be more aggressive because it isn't something that we screen for. It's something that we work up on the basis of clinical findings, something that's felt or a notice on physical exam. But it is something that if any man does feel a lump, that they do need to come seek evaluation right away because it needs to be acted on. But in terms of screening, I do want to note that women who are at high risk, who are at elevated or high risk, they have a different screening protocol. They need to be seen for screening mammography beginning at age 30 and again on an annual basis. But they also warrant additional supplemental screening with contrast-based modalities such as breast MRI or contrast-enhanced mammography. So important for all women to talk to their doctor, ideally by the age of 30, in order to have a personal, individualized risk assessment.
We just got a question in that asked, so what do I do? Do I just call a mammogram place and request a screening? Do I ask my doctor for a referral? So maybe if women don't understand how that works, how to get in that door, what could you tell them about how to go about getting one scheduled?
It's always best to touch base with your primary care doctor for an order for screening, ideally because you want your primary care doctor in the loop. You want them to be able to follow up on any recommendations that are made on the basis of your screening exam. You want somebody ushering you through that process. That said, it is not required for women to have an order to get a screening mammogram. Women who are of screening age can present for screening mammography without a physician order. So there are not that many places that will do that. You have to look into the facility, but all women should be able to pursue screening mammography regardless of whether or not they are plugged into a physician. But ideally, they would be looping in either their primary care doctor or their OB-GYN or any other healthcare provider that's going to be an advocate for their breast health and make them a part of that screening process.
And Cynthia, as the American Cancer Society National Volunteer of Making Strides, you really are very familiar with the services that the ACS offers. I think a lot of people associate it with research, but so many amazing services that you provide, even just if you don't have a ride to your cancer treatment, they provide those as well. Can you just kind of share a little bit about what the organization does and the many services it offers here on the First Coast?
Sure. So a lot of organizations don't tell you one key thing about why they fundraise. They don't tell you where the money goes. And the American Cancer Society does a really good job of showing you where that money goes. And it is into a variety of patient services in addition to research. Now, when I say research, we are giving money to those brand new young researchers who don't have grants, who have a great idea and want to look at some cure for cancer, some treatment for cancer. And so we fund them to get their careers started. So in that funding, we have many people who have gone on.
Cynthia, you still there? Okay, sorry about that. We lost Cynthia, but Dr. Scuderi, one thing that you've also noticed is that, and we want to share today, that different women face different risks for breast cancer, and they also face different types of breast cancer. Can you share that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think this is such an important topic and something that I think we need to talk about more in the media. And that is that there is a lot of disparity present in breast cancer diagnosis and breast cancer mortality, and particularly in Black women. Black women and African American women are 7 times more likely to die from breast cancer compared with white women. I mean, the statistics, and that's just one statistic. There are some pretty amazing disparities here. Black women are more likely to have triple negative breast cancer, which is one of the most, if not the most aggressive type of breast cancer that we see. They are more likely to have a poor prognosis as a result of that diagnosis, and significantly at increased likelihood of having breast cancer that is associated with BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutations in those patients diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer. Triple-negative breast cancers are also more likely to come up in between screenings, so it's very important. These are so-called interval cancers. It's very important that women of color are getting their mammograms regularly. First and foremost, that risk assessment, that they're having a risk assessment by their physician by the age of 30. That is a big thing that needs to be done so that we can catch those women early and elevate the screening process for them and prioritize it. But then also starting at age 30 with screening mammography and supplemental screening breast MRI or contrast enhanced mammography for those ladies, but also make sure that they are plugged into community resources should they face a diagnosis, which I know many women of color can struggle with.
And we have Shay Chantel on the line with us now. Shay, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Now Shay, you're an African-American woman. You are a breast cancer survivor. But when you started to kind of, hit Google and start looking up your condition, you really didn't find many people who really reflected you online. And that really frustrated you in terms of trying to get information about your condition.
Yes, it did. I tried to find other Black women that was documenting their journey, and I couldn't really find any. So I would check Google and, of course, YouTube to see if they had videos and different stuff like that or support groups. I know that there probably was some out there, but it wasn't easy for me to search, to find. So that's why I said when I started my journey that I was going to write a book, start doing videos, so in case someone else is out there looking for someone, they will be able to come across me easy.
And you've now, and as a result, you did turn to the American Cancer Society for help to connect with women like you who you could talk to and learn from.
Yes, and I can't really remember what it's called, but I called it the Buddy Program. But yeah, I called in and they took my information and paired me with a couple of ladies, and they called me and we talked a couple times.
And now you have become a very vocal advocate. In fact, apparently you're sending way too many women to your doctor. She's being overscheduled.
Yeah, she said that there were people coming in saying that Shay thumped me because my doctor, I love my doctor. I was just going in for a regular wellness visit, I think they call them, and she's the one that detected it for me. So if I hadn't went to see her, then I more than likely wouldn't have known because I didn't detect it on my own.
And now you are also doing videos. You're writing a book.
Yes, I'm in the process of writing a book, and I've done some videos, and I just have to complete them and upload them to my YouTube and everything like that.
Well, Shay, I think that's amazing that you're turning your experience into something positive for other women and providing something that you didn't have at the time.
Right. So that's why I'm doing it, for people to be more aware and everything. Because I do tell a couple of my friends that they need to get their screenings, and a lot of times they're hesitant or they're scared and, fearful of not knowing. Some people think if I don't know, then that's better. But it's better to know early so you can be able to get that diagnosis and get treatment early than later.
Oh, Shay, thanks so much for calling. And everybody look out for Shay Chantel. Look for her. Can we find you on YouTube?
You can find me on Instagram right now. It's just Shay Chantel. It's ChayShantell, because I have my management working on my YouTube right now.
Oh, you got your management. You go, girl.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you
for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us this morning. And we'd like to bring Cynthia back on the line. Cynthia, you were sharing about some of the services that the American Cancer Society offers, and fortunately, you got cut off. Can you pick up where you left? Sorry about that.
That's okay. So we raise money for research, but also patient services. So the service that Chantel talked about was most likely Reach to Recovery, where we pair breast cancer survivors with newly diagnosed breast cancer patients so that they have that buddy or a mentor to go through the process so they understand better what's going to happen each step of the journey. And sometimes those people become lifelong friends. We also have the wonderful Hope Lodge. Many people have to travel for their services, and they just can't afford to stay in a hotel room for weeks on end for their chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, whatever it may be. So we have a brand new Hope Lodge. We actually opened it right before the pandemic, had to close it down, and now in the last month, we've opened it up again. It sits on the Mayo campus, Mayo Clinic campus, but it's actually an American Cancer Society Hope Lodge. you can stay there for free during your treatment. You just need to submit your information and make sure they know who you are, where you're getting treated, all that kind of stuff. So that is a huge benefit in the financial world. And then we do events to bring awareness to breast cancer. And one of our big events in the breast cancer area is Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. And that is coming up in Jacksonville on October 23rd. It is a 1.5-mile walk. It's just fun. It's not competitive. And this year we're doing it a little different. We're still having it at TIAA Field in the East Club Plaza. And people will gather, but we are hoping that people will be more spread out just for safety considerations. Festivities will begin at 8:30, and then the walk, there's no formal start time, but it will start between 9 and 9:30. So people can walk at different points.
And Cynthia, I want to jump in before we run out of time, because we also want to let folks know that you've got the Calford Ball that's coming up on November 6th. So you've got quite the opposite. Put on your sneakers or put on your blingy boots. And we also want to give a shout out to the Real Men Wear Pink. That's a group of male community and business leaders. And for the last 6 years, they've been raising awareness and funds for the American Cancer Society. So on the 23rd, after you do the walk, head over to Lynch's Irish Pub over at the beach on the 23rd. They're going to have music, beverage specials, and they're even going to have a Let's Crush Cancer Cornhole Tournament. Starts at noon until a cornhole king or queen is named. So thank you, everybody, so much, ladies, for joining us on this very important topic. And remember, if you have questions about your health or getting a screening, please contact your doctor. You can also reach out to the American Cancer Society to learn more about their services. And of course, we wish Casey, a friend and colleague of many of us here in the media here in Jacksonville, all the very best in her journey. Well, we have much more still ahead. Later, the latest from Adapt. But up next, John and Bill Delaney tackle cancel culture. We'll be right back. Former mayor and UNF president John Delaney was just named president of Flagler College in St. Augustine after leading the school on an interim basis. You know, college campuses have been ground zero for the national discussion on cancel culture, wokeness, and changing ideas about how to foster inclusiveness while still preserving free speech. As one recent example, University of Chicago associate geophysicist professor spoke out against the Massachusetts Institute of Technology this week after the university canceled its guest lecture amid criticism from campus activist groups. So Professor Dorian Abbott was denied the opportunity to give the prestigious Carlson lecture after comments he made about how to structure academic evaluations and whether race should be considered. In the latest in our occasional series looking at the way families often disagree on politics, John Delaney and his son Bill, who's editor and publisher at our news partner The Jackson, take on the subject of cancel culture. Here's that conversation.
Probably another area for us to roll around is this, maybe this word is too strong, but the idea of censorship, or as many conservatives call a cancel culture, that you either get shamed or, in some cases, Democrats in Congress, really want to regulate free speech on Facebook and Twitter and those kinds of things. And so what's kind of your perspective on that?
Well,
you see both sides doing it.
Yeah, I see that it is a problem, and it's becoming a very serious concern in this historical moment. I just cannot see that this is like a one-sided issue, that it's Republicans and conservatives talk about the left canceling people and cancel culture, but I mean the right does that too. And I mean, to me, the best example is book bannings. I've lived through too many book bannings to see the right as kind of defenders of free speech. It's not unique to the right to try to ban or challenge a book, but they are far and away more prolific at it.
Give some examples of that.
So right now, the number one banned book, according to the American Library Association, is a book called George. And it's been banned and challenged. It's been the most banned and challenged over the last couple of years, I believe, because it's about a transgender girl. There are 3 books in the top 10 right now who are banned because they have elements that are critical of the police. And it's like, what, books can't criticize the police now? I mean, we better cancel Solzhenitsyn. You know, and it's other things like that. I mean, the Harry Potter books were banned in the past. That was mostly, you know, religious conservatives. There's, you know, books that contain too frank of a discussion of sexuality, especially, you know, of LGBTQ sexuality, that have been the subject of bans and challenges. And that is still, I mean, that is the most pervasive kind of censorship in the U.S. now, is book bannings.
Interesting. I've never heard of the book George, and as we were joking in between that if we get into literature, you're gonna crush me because you're so broadly read with your master's in English and writing. I'm pretty wide open on that, and have been paying a lot more attention to the First Amendment since we had a Ku Klux Klan student at UNF when I was president there, and really got to kind of study the ACLU's position on it and on free speech, or at least its then position. It's evolving a little bit now. I mean, you know, Mark Twain's books, some of those have been on, you know, a banned list in some government-owned libraries because of the use of the N-word. And I can remember some students came to see me and they wanted to ban Republicans from coming to speak to campus. And you know, I said, well, we're not allowed to ban one over the other. And there's been pretty serious protests on Dr. Murray, who wrote The Bell Curve, and the book that has, I guess, a chapter on it that the IQ differences, measurable IQ between the various races. And he's been the subject of what they call the heckler's veto, just shout it out. And person that was introducing him disagreed with the book. I think he ended up with a broken arm or jaw or something, that people stormed the stage. And kind of the original premise of the ACLU was any restriction on free speech short of defamation is a bad one. And in political thought, much like you talk about voting, you know, we should make that open, that political thought, we should encourage that debate and discussion.
And I agree with that 100%. And I hate the way that, you know, a number of people have been, you know, ostracized or even physically attacked based on what they say. You know, I think that where it's coming from is, you know, there's this worry about, you know, rise in kind of Nazism and fascism, and there are legitimate Nazis and fascists out there, but they don't end it with those people. They don't end it with the Richard Spencers. They extend it to, like you were talking about, the author of The Bell Curve, and that's just an example of they don't like what he has to say.
Yeah, you know, I had actually a reporter here in town covered the Richard Spencer speech down at the University of Florida, where it was in the wake of the Charlottesville debacle, and people were petrified that he was a white supremacist, that there would be riots in Gainesville. And the reporter had an interesting observation. He said there was only about 10 people in the auditorium, and he said, part of me thinks if we just ignored him and the crowd was so spare that it almost would have been a better way to handle it. And I you know, occasionally get a flash of that idea on a Holocaust denier. You go, why pay attention to him? You know, I mean, it's, you just give them oxygen to repeat something that is both hate-filled and demonstrably untrue. You know, their view is demonstrably untrue. But I think the major lesson of the Holocaust is never forget. So, we've got to keep that laid out there. But the Spencer the speech down in Gainesville, the reporter, that was interesting. It was not on air or anything, but it was an interesting thought.
Yeah, well, I think it's, and this goes back to social media, it is very difficult to just give somebody the silent treatment these days. It's very difficult to just, ignore them and deny them oxygen, which is why you hear so much about, deplatforming certain people. I mean, it happened to President Trump on Twitter. And I think that's an issue with social media. And, I mean, it's deeper than an individual having the right to say something that is false or untrue. It's, I work in social media. I have for years. And the way they function is based on algorithms that are entirely dedicated to encouraging engagement. And so they don't find things based on them being true or false. They find them based on what's most likely to get a response and keep people's eyes glued to the screens. And so that is why it's such a playground for bad actors who are able to manipulate the algorithm and get just outright false things or very divisive things, occasionally even violent things, to get traction, is because they're playing with that algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it exists now is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that it's going to be fixed by just deplatforming a couple of people. It's like, sure, they'll kick the president off for repeated lies and saying things that, that
President Trump.
Yeah, President Trump, that incite, an insurrection. But there's still thousands and thousands of other people on there that are saying the same things that they don't kick off. I mean, it's like they're picking around the edges by banning certain people so they don't have to change their algorithm that exists entirely to get more eyes on screens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine it is hard to police, so they're having to kind of have artificial intelligence look for certain trigger words.
Right, and that's the thing. There's not anybody who's in charge of this.
Yeah.
They've let an algorithm be in charge of what millions of people across the world see.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no, checks and balances. There's not even really any good way for a human to look at it and shut it down. There's just not enough humans to be able to do that work.
It still involves judgment even then, and because
Right.
some of the algorithm have kicked off some pretty innocent things or some fairly mild political correctness challenges that and it causes a reaction to say, well, look how ridiculous this has gotten. And I can remember when the Times Union used to have a pretty healthy comment section after articles, and of course they didn't have enough staff to police some of those things, and had one where, the language and the things people said that I ought to do, or I should, quote, let my wife do, were outrageous. Now they removed it, and that was an earlier example of what social media is. It's just a Wild West, and I just don't know how you regulate it in any reasonable way, but, maybe we'll figure it out.
Yeah, maybe we will one day. I will say I think that you're usually pretty good on Twitter. You're a voice of seeing the other side of things and, and trying to talk to people who disagree with you. I wish we saw more of that, or at least I wish that more of it got the kind of engagement that the hot takes and the nasty headlines tend to get.
Yeah, could you tell your baby brother that? Yeah, I kind of have a little bit of a mission to just really, when I got elected, I had some political ideologies, and I realized that other people's are just as valid. Jacksonville is undertaxed now. As I move towards retirement, I'm not quite as eager to see taxes go up as much. And if you grew up discriminated against, or you're going to have a particular set of values, and those are valid. Michael Moore, the very liberal documentarian, he's got a great way of expressing that in a ballot box, everybody's equal to the billionaire. The billionaire has no more oomph in a ballot. It's one vote, unless, of course, people are cheating. But
Or unless, of course, the billionaire is restricting other people from being able to vote.
That's touche. Probably a good place to end this one on.
Agreed.
Thanks for staying with us, everyone. Brendan Rivers is the lead reporter for WJCT News Adapt, and he's been very busy lately with, among other things, a new podcast and several upcoming events. Brendan is here now to tell us about them. Hey, Brendan.
Good morning, Charlene. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. And along with Dr. Jerry Pinto of Jacksonville University's Marine Science Research Institute, one of the lead investigators and authors of the annual State of the River Report. Dr. Pinto, thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you.
So, Brendan, tell us about the latest ADAPT newsletter and podcast. What's the focus, and also how can people find them? I've caught them; they're excellent.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, so it's a profile of Ann Colonnisi, who is Jacksonville's first ever chief resiliency officer. She just came into town this year and has kind of hit the ground running. So it's the web version is just a Q&A, and then I produced a podcast based on that, and the podcast has a lot of additional content. So I definitely think it's worth checking out the audio version if you've read the Q&A already even. And we talk about a lot of stuff. It's really interesting. We learn about her background, her education, why she got into this field. We talk about some of the things that are important to her, environmental justice, this concept of resilience dividends is something that's really important to her. And basically what that means is using these solutions for multiple benefits. So, for example, if you plant a tree to help reduce flooding, that tree also provides shade, which helps deal with heat. That shade can also help reduce air conditioning costs. It provides all sorts of social benefits. So that's kind of one of the concepts that's really critical to her work philosophy. And this young woman is very impressive. She's very intelligent. And she has a really impressive resume, and I think that all comes through when you hear from her. So I definitely recommend anyone who's interested in climate change, especially how it's impacting us locally, give it a listen and let me know what you think.
And more about our new resiliency officer. And Dr. Pinto, this year's River Report is being released tomorrow. Can you give us some insight as to what we can expect from it?
I'm reluctant to give you all the details because we like to release those during the actual release.
It's called a teaser, Doctor. Give us a tease about what we should be looking forward to and listening for.
Well, certainly, sure. I mean, the report will be released tomorrow at the Environmental Symposium, the city's Environmental Symposium at UNF. And I think most people are familiar with what's been in the news lately is these algae blooms that we have in the river. And so we will be addressing and talking about nutrient issues and things that have contributed to that being extra bad this year. But we've certainly seen over the last decade an increase in these types of blooms, and they have impacts on people's health. So that's one important thing. But the report also covers a lot of other areas, not just water quality. We look at the fisheries, we look at the wetland situation, we look at contaminants in the river. There's a general guide to the public that's very informative. And then there is an educational component that provides a lot of information to teachers and hopefully Duval County school system so that they can use some of these resources to teach what's happening locally in the environment.
And how, you said things were kind of extra bad this year. So how is it going to compare to last year's? Are we going in the wrong direction compared to last year's report?
Well, actually, in some areas, things are improving a little bit. But the reason that things have been bad in the last couple of years is that we've had some anomalous weather events that have sort of stirred up a lot of nutrients and stirred up a lot of things. And so they have contributed to things taking a turn for the worse in the last few years. In some areas, though, things are starting to get back to, I hate to use the term normal because things are not normal with climate change. We're constantly changing towards this new normal. So that's probably the reason for some of the upticks in nutrients.
And Brennan, ADAPT is hosting an event tied to this report. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how folks can listen in or participate?
Sure. So it's sort of a two-part event, really. So the first event will be at 4 on October 20th. That's Wednesday next week. And that event will feature a lot of Dr. Pinto's colleagues. This will be sort of technical experts, research scientists who helped work on the report, and they'll kind of be discussing their findings. And then the second event is more geared towards the general public, and that'll be at 7 p.m. that night. Again, that's Wednesday, October 20th next week. And that will kind of generally go over some of the main findings of the report with a focus on climate change because it's an ADAPT event, and it'll have several really...
I like that disclaimer, because it's an ADAPT event.
We have to. We're legally required. And that'll have several prominent panelists as well, including Ann Colanesi, the Chief Resilience Officer. Charles Garrison will be there as well. He's the Water Committee Chair on Jacksonville's Environmental Protection Board. The St. Johns Riverkeeper Lisa Reineman will be there, who I know listeners are very familiar with. And Dr. Pinto's colleague, Dr. Quentin White, who is the Executive Director of the Marine Science Research Institute at Jacksonville University, will also be there. So really great panel, and I think it'll be a really informative evening. So I highly recommend everyone who's able to attend. You can find details at wjct.org/events.
You know, when I was a reporter, Dr. Quentin White was always our shark expert. We'd always go down to his office down there, and it was always had shark's teeth and shark jaws and all that kind of good stuff. And real quick before we wrap, how is this event going to be different from your other ADAPT events?
Well, so this is going to be very similar to the event we did a year ago because during the pandemic, they didn't do the environmental symposium. We did these in place, and they liked it. So we're kind of rehashing that same sort of style of event. So it's similar to last year's River Report event.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Brennan. Thank you so much, Dr. Pinto, for that insight into the report that's expected out tomorrow and your great ADAPT events. And again, Brennan, you just do a phenomenal job with this information.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, folks, and in a moment, a preview of this weekend's Viva la Fiesta Festival in downtown Jacksonville. Say that 3 times fast. That's coming up next. Stay with us.
Congaree & Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com.
The UF Health Neuroscience Institute. As part of an academic health center, our neurologists, neurosurgeons, and other specialists use the latest technology and treatment options for even the most complex conditions. Learn more at ufhealthjax.org.
Hi, I'm Brendan Rivers, lead reporter for ADAPT, WJCT's website and newsletter on climate change. This year's State of the River report says we should be worried about the health of the St. Johns. Hear local officials react to this year's findings and talk about what they think should be done to protect the St. Johns River. Join us for a virtual panel discussion on Wednesday, October 20th. Register now at wjct.org/events.
I'm Scott Tong. Conservation groups are outraged after the U.S. Department of Agriculture admitted to killing 8 young wolf pups in an Idaho forest in August. The pups were part of a pack being studied by students at the nearby Timberline High School in Boise. That is next time on Here and Now.
Today at 2 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next 1A, America's foster care crisis. According to the CDC, more than 140,000 children in the U.S. have lost a caregiver to COVID-19. That means the foster care system is overwhelmed with more children, and there are fewer families willing to take care of them. Hundreds of thousands of vulnerable kids are at risk. Who's looking out for them? Next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back, everybody. To mark Hispanic Heritage Month, well, get on out to enjoy the first ever free 2-day Hispanic Festival in the city that's coming up this weekend at James Weldon Johnson Park. Melissa Ross spoke with festival organizer Yanira Cardona.
Hey, Yanira. Hola. Good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Hola, Melissa. Thank you. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear about it. This is the first ever 2-day Hispanic Festival in Jacksonville coming up this weekend. It'll be downtown at James Weldon Johnson Park. Sounds like a lot of fun as we mark Hispanic Heritage Awareness Month. What all is on the agenda?
So, like you said, it's the first ever 2-day Hispanic Festival. Viva la Fiesta is our 3rd anniversary. And so to celebrate, and celebrate life, we're going to be giving away free salsa and merengue classes. There's going to be a kids zone. We're going to have local typical dances from Panama. We're going to have typical Latin food. And Saturday, October 16th, we're going to have famous merengue singer Oscarito from Grupo Mania. So he's going to have everybody dancing. Even if you don't know Spanish, believe me, the rhythm is going to get you like Gloria Estefan
That's
said.
right. That's right. Yeah, and then LPT on Sunday. They're a very popular salsa band in town. Yeah?
Yes, we're excited to have LPT for Salsa Sunday. They're going to be releasing their second album that Sunday, October 17th. So they're going to be playing all of their songs, but specifically their second album. So come on out, and we're going to be teaching salsa that day also. So anyone that wants to learn about salsa, come on out on Sunday at 2 p.m., and you're going to get free classes.
Fun and lots of great food in addition to the music and dance classes. This is really an easy way we can all celebrate the growth of the Hispanic community in this city and Hispanic American Awareness Month. Now, and you have a wealth of experience in putting on these kinds of events. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes, so I own Jaja Production, and I specifically cater to the Hispanic community in Jacksonville. So, like I said, Viva la Fiesta is our 3rd one. We helped put on the first Hispanic Film Festival. We worked with PGA Tour to help create marketing campaigns for the Hispanic and African American community. So I'm very proud to be involved with the Hispanic community. Jacksonville's Hispanic community right now, from the census, is about 11.3%. I personally think we're at least at 13%. And it's the fastest growing demographic community here in Jacksonville. So, it's about time that we present ourselves, and what a better way with Viva la Fiesta, where we could present not just one specific race, we could, we could demonstrate all of the beautiful culture that the Latin America has to offer.
That's interesting. You think the numbers might be a little undercounted. And, of course, Florida is a state that has robust representation from Latin America, but we tend to think of that as more in South Florida or Central Florida. But the demographics up here in North Florida have really been changing in recent years. And what do you think's driving that when you talk to people across the community?
I think the fact that Jacksonville is a very more family-oriented city, and the Hispanic community, we're looking for that. And although, I lived in Miami, I lived in Orlando, I've done my time in Tampa as well, there's a difference between Jacksonville and all the other cities. Jacksonville is a little more slower in that sense. It's more family-oriented. There's more restaurants in the sense of that they could enjoy with their families. So, and there's more job opportunity up here, honestly, and that's the reason why they've come up here as well. The job opportunity, Jacksonville, the fact that we're a growing city, this is the city that if you want to build, this is the city to come and build a business. And a lot of the Hispanics that are moving here are entrepreneurs. They're opening their own restaurants. They're opening their own stores. And so they see the growth and opportunity here in Jacksonville. And so I think that's the reason why mainly they're coming up from Miami and Orlando.
Wow, interesting. It's really interesting to see what's driving people to move here, making for a more vibrant community. So with all of that said, you want everyone to come on out this weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. Things get going in the afternoon and go through the evening, both nights, right?
Yes, ma'am. So on Saturday, we start at 4 p.m., so it gives you time to be home and clean your house Saturday morning, and then you could come out from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. at James Weldon Johnson Park. And Sunday is from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., so you have enough time to come out with your family, enjoy some lunch with us, and enjoy some amazing music with LPT.
Come on out this weekend to the Hispanic Festival, both days this weekend at James Weldon Johnson Park in downtown Jacksonville. Yanira Cardona is leading the whole thing through Yaya Productions, and kudos to you. It'll be a great time. Have fun. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Gracias.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us this morning on First Coast Connect. Our senior producer is Heather Schatz. Our director today is Josh Torres. Catherine Hobbs is our associate producer. Our editorial director is Jessica Palumbo. And Randy Roguski is our news editor. Do you have any questions or comments about First Coast Connect? Send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. I'm Charlene Shirk, honored to be sitting in for Melissa Ross, and you're listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. We'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow, but if you missed anything, you can listen to the replay on WJCT.org and on your favorite podcast platform. Have a great day, everybody.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TP